Yeah. 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 So many lies that you hear from the net, they don't get her respect. She reporting the truth, not a check. You want an unbiased opinion straight from the chest, not a bit of conflict or someone here for a check. Tune in, these are thoughts from a lawyer on a mission who goes so hard it's like she works on commission. Trolls in the comments might say she tripping cause they lack the knowledge, they don't know they missing. Got a couple current events that you like, wanna know about law from the eyes. Tired of all these blogs running lies because their agenda's a disguise. Tune in to the intellect, cause I'm sure y'all missing all the facts of the case that she steady is gifting. Someone here for the people, man, it's so uplifting. If you ain't subscribed yet, then you just omitting facts.
Hello, everyone. It is Pam Esquire, also known as Your Law Intellect. Listen, I decided to hop on real quick because I did get some DMs regarding YSL. So I've been loosely trying to follow what has been going on over there in Fulton County with the RICO shenanigans. And every time I'm on Twitter, I just see people beefing and I'm better than you, and you doing it for cash apps and clout chasing and all this, that they've come so far away from the trial and what the trial is about that I kind of backed off a little bit. But I did run across something that just happened a few minutes ago, of which it appears that Judge Whitaker has revoked some Rule 22s, apparently. And also, one of the YSL members has pled. Mr. Nichols has pled. So they were going to put that on the record. So for those that were saying, I believe it was the news that said that there were negotiations happening, apparently that is a true statement. Even though we did have other people come out and say, you know, nobody knows what's really happening behind the scenes. Well, apparently somebody knew because there were talks of negotiations because a plea was placed on there. So I am going to play what I just ran across because I thought it was interesting. I was like, wait, what just happened? Hold on. Let me see. Let's move it up a little bit here. Okay.
All right, first things first. Miss Sylvia and Mr. Byron, if you all could both please come up to the podium. Yes, please. Thank you. All right, so for both of you, I am sorry to have to say this, but I am going to be entering in order modifying each of your Rule 22s. It has come to my attention and I have confirmed that each of you has been recording in the courtroom while I have not been on the bench, and that is a clear violation of Rule 22. And so you may record today's proceedings, but after today, if you want to record, you're going to have to do it from the media room. You may be in here in the courtroom as a spectator without any recording equipment, or you may be in the media room to record, but no more with your equipment in the courtroom because y'all have both recorded things that you're not supposed to be recording based on Rule 22. So I'll enter those orders today. Thank you. All right. It is my understanding.
Look at Dennis's face, though. He wanted to say something so bad. He's looking like, what the heck? What I got to do with it? What do I gotta do? So it looks like, I'm sorry, I said revoked. I guess that was not the proper term. I want to correct myself. There was a modification. So it looks like they have to be in the media room and they're not allowed, I guess, to go in the courtroom. But look, Dennis stood there for a minute like, what I gotta do with this? So be interesting to see what exactly, the judge said they saw the evidence of this occurring. So she did it off of her own eyes. And there we have it, y'all. There we have it. So I know that Mr. Nichols is doing a plea.
Understanding that we have a plea to be tendered for Mr. Nichols. Is that right? All right.
Your Honor, may we approach?
You may. And Mr. Garland, who's
Okay, let me go back a little bit because the plea, I guess, is happening now. We all want to see that as well. Okay.
And Mr. Harvey, Ms. Westmoreland, and Mr. Garland, who's going to be taking the lead going through the plea? Okay. All right, Mr. Harvey, do either you or you, Ms. Hilton, need this plea of guilty and waiver of rights form back?
Thank you.
My dish should have never bought that dress. You guys trip.
All right, Mr. Nichols and Mr. Harvey, whenever y'all are ready, you can come on up to the podium.
Mr. Harvey said he's signing the indictment.
Okay, whenever y'all are ready.
Your Honor, I'd like my client to be present for this. He's a member of the public, and I would like him to observe this, and he has a right to be here.
Okay,
Thank you.
can we get
Are you granting
Mr.
that?
Kendrick
Thank you.
out, please?
One thing Mr. Weinstein is going to do is protect his
Stand
client.
Oh, wait, Your Honor, I'm sorry. Can we have the, yeah, can I approach?
Oh, Lord. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we had another little pause there. We see. Let me see. Let me fast forward it. Good gosh. Okay, wait a minute.
All right, I apologize for the interruption. Thanks for y'all's patience. Some of the co-defendants in the ongoing trial wanted to be out here, so they are out here now. And Mr. Harvey, are we ready with Mr. Nichols?
Crazy.
All right.
You want him at the podium or you want him here at seated?
I think at the podium, please. Thank you. Now let's have him at the podium because he's going to have to take an active part in this entry. All right.
Okay, sure.
Sergeant, can you swear him in, please?
Raise your right hand. So I heard testimony you give the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes,
All right. State, spell your first and last name for the court, so not into the mic, please, sir.
Quamarvious Nichols, Quamarvious, last name Nichols, Nichols.
Did you
All
get that, Judge? Okay. Do you want to do it again? All right, slow down. Your name, spell it for this young lady right here.
Okay, my name is Quamarvious Nichols, first name Quamarvious, my last name Nichols, Nichols.
And Mr. Nichols, are you the same person referred to as
Quamarvious Nichols on indictment 22 SC 183572.
Yes.
And are you at this time taking or under the influence of any alcohol, drugs, or medicine?
No.
Have you had the opportunity to sign this indictment with your attorney, Mr. Bruce Harvey?
Yes.
How old are you?
29.
And how far did you go in school?
I got my GED.
I did not hear you.
I got my GED.
Are you able to read, write, and understand the English language?
Yes.
Do you understand that in this indictment, you were initially charged with count 1, conspiracy to violate the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, which carries a sentence of 5 to 20 years. You were also charged with count 49 in this indictment, which is murder, which carries a sentence of life. You were charged with 2 counts of participation in criminal street gang activity, which was counts 50 and 51, which each carried a sentence of 5 to 20 years. You were initially charged with counts 53 and 65, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon under Code Section 16-11-133, which each carry a sentence of 15 years consecutive to count 1. And then you were also charged with count 54, which is possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, which carried a sentence of 5 years consecutive to count 1. Do you understand that that is what you were initially charged with?
Yes.
Do you understand that you have the right to plead either guilty or not guilty to these charges? And if you plead not guilty or remain silent, you may receive a jury trial.
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity to go over and review the waiver of rights form with your attorney?
Yes.
And I'm going to hand this to your attorney. Did you sign this along with your attorney?
Yes.
Have you had enough time to speak with your attorney, Mr. Bruce Harvey, about all the facts and circumstances known to you regarding the charge in this indictment?
Yes.
Do you need any more time to discuss this matter with your attorney?
No.
Are you satisfied with his counsel and representation?
Yes.
And I'd include in there the counsel and representation by Ms. Westmoreland and Mr. Garland as well. You had a team of attorneys.
That's correct.
All right.
And they are all attorneys of record and have participated in this particular proceeding and negotiations leading up to this proceeding.
Thank you.
Do you waive formal reading of the indictment?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you waive any and all defects with respect to the indictment?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, have you been arrested on all the charges in this indictment?
Yes.
And Mr. Harvey, the state is unaware of any outstanding warrants related to these charges. Do you know of any outstanding warrants that are related to these charges?
Not related to those charges.
Have you been advised of the minimum and maximum sentence for each charge that you are pleading to?
Yes.
Do you understand this is a negotiated plea of guilty, which means that the state will recommend to the court as to count 1, conspiracy to violate the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, a sentence of 20 years to serve 7 years in custody, balance on probation.
Yes.
Do you understand that as a part of the negotiated agreement, the state will null, prosper, or dismiss count 49, which is the murder count, count 50, 51, which are the gang activity counts, count 53, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, count 54, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, and count 65, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Do you understand that is the negotiated agreement?
Yes.
Do you understand that the court does not have to accept that recommendation?
Yes.
And the court can sentence you to the maximum on each charge and can run those charges consecutively or one after the other?
Yes.
Well, there's only one charge that
So I-
a guilty plea is
I
being
listened
entered into, so
Under my breath today.
there's no other sentence to run anything consecutively with
Right.
regard to this plea. You understand that?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you understand this plea may be used to enhance sentencing on other convictions in this jurisdiction as well as in other jurisdictions, including the federal courts?
Yes.
Do you understand if you are currently on probation or parole, your probation or parole may be revoked based on your entering a guilty plea today?
Yes.
Do you understand if you're placed on probation of any kind, you cannot violate any criminal laws of any governmental unit or any special conditions of probation without being subject to revocation for the balance of your sentence?
Yes.
Do you understand you are not allowed to possess or use a firearm while on probation?
Yes.
Do you understand if you are not a United States citizen, a guilty plea conviction will affect your immigration status and will result in deportation, just like a conviction at a trial would? And that is true regardless of any advice by your attorney or anyone else.
Yes.
Do you understand that neither the court, your attorney, nor the district attorney's office has anything to do with parole, the Department of Corrections, or Board of Partisan Paroles, and no one can guarantee parole no matter what anyone has told you?
Yes.
Do you understand that there may be other adverse or unfavorable consequences as a result of this guilty plea conviction, just as there would be from a conviction following a trial? For example, your guilty plea may affect your right to vote, your right to hold public office, your right to serve on a jury, your right to obtain a passport, your right to receive, possess, or transport a firearm, or the ability to obtain employment.
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty to a felony, if you use, receive, possess, or transport a firearm, or use a firearm in a crime, you will be guilty of a felony, which may carry a sentence of 1 to 15 years in prison?
Yes.
Do you understand that you waive any and all defenses, including any mental health defenses, by entering a plea of guilty?
Yes.
Do you understand if you went to trial, you have the right to a trial by jury, the right to see, hear, and confront witnesses called to testify against you, and the right to testify to remain silent and not incriminate yourself?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you are giving up the following rights? After each right, I'll ask you to say yes or no if you understand. The right to a trial by jury.
Yes.
The right to remain silent and not incriminate yourself.
Yes.
The right to confront witnesses against you.
Yes.
The right to assist of counsel hired by you or to court-appointed counsel if you cannot afford an attorney at the trial of your case.
Yes.
The right to the presumption of innocence.
Yes.
The right to testify on your own behalf and to present other evidence.
Yes.
The right to subpoena witnesses and compel the production of evidence.
Yes.
The right to have the charges against you proved beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yes.
The right to appeal if convicted of these charges after a trial.
Yes.
Has anyone forced, threatened, or promised you anything to get you to enter a guilty plea?
No.
Is it your decision to waive these rights and enter a guilty plea because you're in fact guilty?
Yes.
With respect to indictment 22 SC 183572, how do you plead to count 1, conspiracy to violate the Racketeer, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act?
Guilty.
Is this guilty plea freely and voluntarily given with a full knowledge of the charge against you?
Yes.
Do you understand that you have only a limited right to appeal this guilty plea conviction?
Yes.
Do you understand that you have 4 years from today's date to file a habeas corpus petition challenging the voluntariness of this plea?
Yes.
That can challenge anything about the constitutionality of the plea. It's not limited to voluntariness. Understand?
Yes.
And Your Honor, if this case were to
Hang on just a second. You also have, so 4 years for that to file a direct appeal. You have 30 days from the date of sentencing, which is going to be today. And you have until the end of this term of court to file a motion seeking to withdraw your guilty plea. That doesn't mean anything like that would be granted you as well.
Yes.
Your Honor, if this case were to continue with trial, Your Honor, the state would expect, as to this defendant, the state would expect to show that what has already come into evidence, that on July 3rd, 2017, as well as October 23rd, 2018, that the defendant is an associate of the enterprise of YSL, also known as Young Slime Life, and that he conspired to associate together with others for the common purpose of illegally obtaining money and property through a pattern of racketeering activity and conducting and participating in the enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity. In furtherance of the conspiracy, this defendant engaged in the activities below. He engaged in activities that assisted with preserving, protecting, and enhancing the reputation, power, and territory of the enterprise through acts of racketeering activity to include murder, assault, and threats of violence. That this defendant preserved, protect, and enhance the reputation, power, and territory of the enterprise by the posting of messages, images, appearance in videos, and songs demonstrating allegiance to the enterprise and a willingness to engage in violence on its behalf, and to obtain money, weapons, and other property through acts of racketeering activity, including the unlawful sale and distribution of drugs. Your Honor, evidence has come in during this trial that on July 3rd, 2017, Mr. Nichols was located at 2612 Steele Avenue, which is in the Cleveland Avenue sector of the city. Your Honor, he was found inside of a vehicle when that vehicle was searched, Your Honor, and this was in October 2018. They found marijuana as well as sandwich baggies that would be used to package drugs, and there are also guns found inside of that vehicle. Also in July of 2017, this defendant was stopped during a traffic stop in the Cascade area, Your Honor. After being stopped, Your Honor, there was a consensual search of the vehicle that yielded powder and MDMA, Xanax, as well as a loaded gun inside of that vehicle. Additionally, Your Honor, in July 2019, Mr. Nichols was featured in a video with another YSL member, Shannon Stillwell, and Woody Lee. In that video, it was entitled Slap Talk. And in that video, co-conspirator Shannon Stillwell, while performing, makes such quotes as, "Me and my slimes are above the law." We know from the evidence that slimes is one of the terminology used by members of YSL to refer to themselves or other members of this enterprise. And then last but certainly not least, Your Honor, that in March of 2022, Your Honor, Mr. Nichols was found in surveillance video at a gas station at Windsor Street and Fulton Street here in Atlanta, Georgia. This was on March 14, 2022, during what the state would believe to show an onset of a gang war that really started in 2015 with the death of Donovan Thomas that carried on into 2022. In February of 2022, a rival gang member by the name of Rayshawn Bennett, also known as YFN Lucci, was stabbed at the Fulton County Jail in February of 2022. Information about that stabbing was made public at the early part of March 2022, around March 3rd of 2022. Once that information was released to the public, there was an onset of retaliatory activity that occurred between March 3rd, 2022 and March 16th of 2022. That includes a March 11th homicide of YSL associates Christian McMiller and Darius Ford. It also did include a retaliatory shooting of a YFN associate, and then ultimately it led to a murder of Shamel Drinks, who we believe is a YFN associate. This murder occurred again on March 14, 2022. Mr. Nichols is seen on surveillance video at that BP gas station, as I just referenced earlier. He was at the gas station with YSL co-conspirator Shannon Stillwell. Mr. Stillwell was driving an Audi vehicle. Mr. Nichols came to that gas station in a Ford Fusion vehicle. You see both of them on camera together. While they are at that gas station, Shamel Drinks approaches that gas station as well. I think unbeknownst to Mr. Drinks, Mr. Stillwell was still in his vehicle, which is the Audi. At some point in time, Mr. Nichols got to his vehicle, the Ford Fusion. Once Mr. Drinks finished his business or finished handling business at that gas station, we know that there is a phone call between occupants of the car that Mr. Stillwell was in and occupants of the car that Mr. Nichols was in. That communication was to the effect of, you need to get on FaceTime. As soon as that conversation ensues, we see Mr. Drinks leave the gas station in his vehicle, and both the car that Mr. Stillwell is driving, as well as the car that Mr. Nichols is driving, both follow out of the gas station, following behind Mr. Drinks. Mr. Drinks proceeds down the street to the light at Windsor, which is right by I-20 in Windsor. Mr. Drinks is in the far left lane. The car involving with Mr. Stillwell pulls up to the middle lane, and Mr. Nichols' vehicle pulls up to the far right lane. This is all captured on surveillance video and surveillance camera. They are at the light for a moment. Then we see both this car with Mr. Stillwell as well as the car with Mr. Nichols drive through a red light, leaving the car with Mr. Drinks sitting at that light. About 30 minutes later, the Samaritan sees that car still sitting there, approaches the vehicle, and Mr. Drinks is now deceased inside of that vehicle. We had know through LPR readers that both Mr. Stillwell's vehicle and the car involving Mr. Nichols drive in the direction of 20 westbound and follow in tandem. 2 days later, when after the case is investigated and arrest warrants are taken out, on March 17th, 3 days later, Mr. Nichols is found with Mr. Stillwell at a Chick-fil-A gas station, Chick-fil-A restaurant. There is a chase, I'm gonna call it a high-speed chase, but there is a chase through the city of East Point, and eventually Mr. Nichols as well as Mr. Stillwell are both apprehended after arrest warrants were ultimately taken out for the murder of Mr. Drinks, Your Honor. Given where we are in the case, Your Honor, we know that Mr. Nichols, we do not believe Mr. Nichols was in the vehicle in which the shooting occurred, but he was in this other vehicle. The state has made a decision to move forward with this recommendation for the RICO count, Your Honor, for count one.
Mr. Harvey, are y'all acknowledging a factual basis to the count one, the RICO count?
Okay, we are acknowledging a factual basis. There has already been evidence with regard to the July 3rd, 2017 drug event, the October 23rd, 2018 drug event. We categorically deny and contest any use of violence by Mr. Nichols. We don't agree to that underlying factual basis. We believe those two predicate acts that were committed by Mr. Nichols without any question are sufficient to meet the elements of the offense. The offense to which he's pleaded to, which is a RICO conspiracy. A RICO conspiracy requires proof that the defendant either conspire with another person to violate one of the substantive provisions of RICO, and that would be drug offenses, or personally endeavor, I believe that's what the language of the statute says, to violate one of the substantive provisions.
Well, that's what the language of the statute says, but
Yes.
he is indicted in this indictment with conspiring, not with endeavoring.
That's correct. So we're talking about a conspiracy. We acknowledge the two events that he participated in. We categorically deny any other allegations other than those two events that are sufficient for a factual basis. We categorically deny that we participated in any way in the unfortunate death of Mr. Drinks. We categorically deny any other charges to which we are, substantive charges to which we are not entering a plea, and that includes gang charges. This is a plea solely to a conspiracy to violate the RICO Act. So that, but yes, we acknowledge a factual basis to that extent, Your Honor.
Understood. All right, thank you.
Your Honor, you have one additional thing.
Go ahead.
The factual basis regarding the nation YSL is that the evidence has shown and will continue to show that Mr. Nichols conspired with others to participate in Young Slime Life through a pattern of racketeering activity, and multiple defendants and unindicted co-conspirators have committed overt acts to further this conspiracy, including drug sales, aggravated assault, and murder, also including social media posts asserting the violent nature of and asserted dominance of Young Slime Life, also known as YSL. And that concludes our factual basis.
And again, once again, we categorically deny those representations. And again, The only thing that is necessary to meet the factual evidence of a 1614-4C is proof that the defendant conspire with another person to violate one of the substantive provisions of RICO, and that is subsumed by the drug offenses that have already been proven in this case, and to which Mr. Nichols has previously pled.
All right, thank you, understood.
Then you have to approach with the waiver of rights.
Yes. All right, Mr. Harvey, have you reviewed with Mr. Nichols this plea of guilty and waiver of rights form, which the two of you have both signed?
I have, Judge, in each individual provision in that plea colloquy has been acknowledged and gone over personally with Mr. Nichols.
All right. And Mr. Nichols, have you had sufficient time to consider this guilty plea that has been negotiated between the state and your attorneys, and to discuss anything you wanted to about that with your attorneys?
Yes.
All right. And you understand, I hope, I'm going to ask you, that it is your decision ultimately, obviously with the advice of your attorneys, but it's ultimately up to you individually to decide whether you want to enter this guilty plea or not. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right. And you do want to enter this guilty plea?
Yes.
All right. And Mr. Harvey, have you advised Mr. Nichols of the alternatives if he does not ultimately go through with this guilty plea, and the potential benefits and drawbacks of all of the other options?
Yes,
All right.
very thoroughly, Judge.
All right. All right, Mr. Harvey, is there anything that the defense wants to add to the record?
Judge, other than the statement with regard to the underlying factual basis, I would point out for the court that when Mr. Nichols filled out his form, it says 29 plus. He is a birthday boy in a couple of days, and he will be 30. And at 30 years of age, he has a wife. He has got a 13-year-old daughter. He's got a 10-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. His wife and sister, I believe, are here in the courtroom to support him. He, Mr. Nichols, was born and raised in Atlanta. And, you know, we're at this point before I have even given my opening statement in this case.
Yes, sir.
I do want the court to know that Mr. Nichols' mother died in prison. His father was shot by the Atlanta police when he was 4 years old. And he was raised by friends and family in the Atlanta area. So he has come to this point in his life from a very humble beginning. And he has sought the support of friends in this courtroom and others in this courtroom. He is an intelligent young man who I believe has a future. Every day we do a word of the day. We put a new word into a sentence. And I think this is in his best interest. I know that there is, and I know this plea is negotiated, but it's a long downside from 7 to 20. So the courts will have jurisdiction over him for a period of time. So I ask the court, given who this young man is, and given our categorical denial of some of the factual basis, to accept the plea and sentence Mr. Nichols accordingly.
Mr. Nichols, is there anything that you want to say?
No, ma'am.
All right. All right, I find there to be a factual basis for the guilty plea to the RICO count one of the indictment, that being a conspiracy to acquire control or interest in money and personal property through a pattern of racketeering activity. And that is the only count that guilty plea is being entered for. The remaining counts of this indictment as against Mr. Nichols are being null pros by the state as a part of this indictment. I find, having heard the evidence up to the point of trial right now, that there is evidence of at least one overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. And that there is evidence that would fall within the required statute of limitations to establish this RICO conspiracy count. One of the things that we as judges are instructed by our Uniform Superior Court rules to do when we are considering whether to accept a guilty plea and whether to accept a negotiated sentence, and this is a negotiated sentence in this case, is to take into account whether giving leniency in sentencing is going to aid in ensuring promptness and certainty, or at least more promptness and more certainty with regard to corrective measures, whether the defendant, and in this case, the defendant has acknowledged guilt and is accepting responsibility for his guilt of the RICO count, and whether accepting the plea will aid in avoiding further delays, not just with regard to this case, but with regard to the entirety of our system here in Fulton County. And this plea does go towards doing all of those things. I am going to accept the plea as negotiated and sentence in accord with the negotiated recommendation. As I said before, find there to be a factual basis for count one of the plea. I find the plea to have been freely, knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily entered into by Mr. Nichols, with an understanding of the consequences of doing that. And the sentence on count one is the sentence that has been negotiated of 20 years to serve 7, with the balance of those years to be served on probation. And that, I don't know if there are any special conditions attached to this that y'all have talked about at all.
There are no negotiated special conditions in those, so there are none as far as I'm concerned.
All right. Okay. So with regard to the time that you are on probation, you need to stay out of all kinds of criminal trouble. Make this a birthday present to yourself and to your children and to your wife and family, that you will leave from here today and leave whatever you used to do behind you, and take the next few years. You know, you're going to have some years that are still to be served on this. You'll have credit for the time you've already served, but you're still going to be facing some incarceration time. But after that, you are going to be out, and you, I believe Mr. Harvey is correct, can be a productive member of society. And this is an opportunity for you to do that, and for you to put your past behind you, the bad parts of it, and continue and make your children proud of you, and set a good example for them, an example that I guess unfortunately you were not lucky enough to have throughout the entirety of your childhood with your parents. I'm sorry about that, but you can be the kind of parent that you ought to be to your children. So I am going to impose that sentence, and I am going to wish you luck and good fortune as you go forth from here. So I think that unless there's anything else from either party, that will conclude these proceedings, and y'all can go ahead and take him into custody. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
And Ms. Taylor will make this an exhibit to the plea. Thank you. All right, we are adjourned for the day.
Well, you guys heard it. That is that Mr. Q or whatever he goes by over there, Mr. Nichols, I should call him, has just taken a plea. He was facing several counts, including unaliving someone in count 49, gang-related counts per the indictment, count 50. There was a couple of gang-related charges, and then he had 3 different charges or allegations based on possession of a firearm from counts. Most of the counts were nolle pros, which are going to be dismissed by the state. However, he has pled to conspiracy to the RICO charge, conspiracy to racketeering, and it's based on his attorney made it very clear that this is based on drug related charges. He is categorically denying that he participated and further engaged in any other activities, including unaliving anyone and the unaliving of the individual that he was charged with within that indictment. He said it's very clear, and he wants to be very clear on the record. So don't try to put my client up on that stand to try to say that anything was gang related, because he is not pleading to anything gang related, nor is he pleading with anything about unaliving. His plea is, hey, listen, y'all got me on tape in July 3rd, 2017. I think it was October 23rd of 2018, of which I was involved in some type of drug activity, which also was but he is denying that to this day that he engaged in any form of violence. And so he's agreeing to his factual basis, not necessarily the state's big soliloquy that they tried to give. And he said that that is enough in order to plea under that RICO Act, under the provision. And I think his attorney laid it out very well, said that he's talked to his client extensively. And of course, it was up to the judge on whether she was going to accept this negotiated plea. And, he said he's a 29-year-old. He's about to have a birthday in a couple of days. He's already married with a wife. He has a 13-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. He is born in Atlanta. He's had a tragic upbringing where his mother died in prison. His father was shot by the Atlanta police, and he was basically raised by friends and family and probably the homeboys in the hood. And he said, but despite all of this, he had the support of his friends and his family that was in the courtroom, and his attorney labeled him and described him as an intelligent young man with a future. And he said that every day they do a word of the day. He didn't really elaborate on what that word of the day was, but he did say every day they do a word of the day. And he made it clear. He said, again, Judge, I want to say that I find that there's a factual, well, the judge said, I find that there's a factual basis to the RICO count that constitute acquiring money and personal property through racketeering. And she also said, hey, I think that this plea is free, knowingly and voluntarily, which you have to put on the record so you don't come back and say, I didn't even know, Judge. So ultimately, she sentenced him to 20 years to serve the balance on probation, to serve 7 years, and then the balance will be on probation. I think he's been in there, 2-3 years or something already. So because he's been in there that time already, do they do like 2 for 1 or something in Georgia? I'm not sure. But I'm sure he may have he obviously has some more time left because they immediately took him into custody, but he's not doing a whole 7 years because he already done some time. And the judge said, this is a good time for you to start over. So for those of you that just came in, that is just a small summary of what we just heard with the plea of Mr. Nichols. Now, I was concerned at how this was going to affect the rest of the people in YSL that are on trial, but based on what he's pled to, I don't know if it's going to affect it, too much. I'm not sure how his testimony will be very effective, and I think that was strategically done by his attorney. But we shall see. Any questions? Any questions? Thank you so much, Tori. I appreciate that. I'm coming in at the 11th hour. I haven't really been following this case like that, just loosely. I don't have that type of time, unfortunately. Or fortunately, because that means that I have a lot of work. But so Love April said 1/3 of his 7 years in Georgia. Okay. So you said 3 years. All righty. Hey, Kelly, good to see you. So Toria said his wife said he has 3 years to do. Okay, well, that's not too bad. I can see him going with this. Life. If he went on and he was convicted of anything that has to do with unaliving somebody, you may not see the light of day. So 3 years, never getting out. Some people said they didn't think it was a good deal, but what he was facing, I think that it was a good deal. It was a decent deal when you look at the consequences, and he has the certainty to know that he will see his kids grow up. Happy birthday, Linda. Good to see you on here. Hey, Sin, good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. But yeah, this was just random. So I know a lot of people are saying I didn't get the notification. I just jumped on because I was watching it myself. So sometimes I just decide to go live and jump on with you guys too to see if you guys are watching or if it's something that you're interested in. So Judge Whitaker still has not made a finding on the mistrial. I just think she's not going to grant it, but that's just my opinion. But I guess there's still a possibility that she will grant a mistrial without prejudice. Yeah, he made the best deal for him and his family. That's the best way to put it. And people may feel some kind of way, but street code to get you in prison for the rest of your life. He said, "Hey, they got me on video on July and in October. That was me." And I wasn't unaliving anybody, and I wasn't a part of any of that. Whatever I wasn't no gang related, anything. Everything was, drug related. I'm just trying to hustle and live. That's pretty much what he's saying his underlying factual basis is. So, dang, Vegas King, that was pretty rough. Talking about if he makes it out, though. Well, we're gonna pray that he makes it out and he comes home to his family and he does better. We all want a little grace and mercy, or a lot of grace and mercy. And so hopefully he gets out and this was enough. This was his wake up call. Jeez, y'all kind of rough. So Simply Me said, what happened to Dennis and Sylvia? Okay. So if you guys did not see the beginning of this live, so before everything started, you may have to scroll back, but allegedly, so we did watch the video. So before everything happened related to the plea, Judge Whitaker called Dennis and Sylvia to the podium, and she said she had information that they were recording when she was not on the bench. And so she was modifying their Rule 22 because part of the Rule 22 has a provision that you're not supposed to record unless the judge is on the bench. And so she says she has evidence that both of them were recording while she was not on the bench, and therefore they were not allowed in the courtroom. They had to be in the media room. Now, Dennis said he's all good because I text him. I'm not just gonna talk about him. I did ask him. He said, I'm all good. It's all good. And you know, Dennis, he'll probably have some response or a rebuttal. I wouldn't be shocked if he tries to challenge it. Again, I don't know what evidence she looked at to know this information or whatever. So you said Love gave the information. Okay. Out now. Make sure y'all hit that like button on your way out. Yeah, that's what I said. I saw Dennis in the media room most of the time. I don't know. Because they're like, I mean, unless it was that picture he had in the beginning. No, I was gonna say he might have been. He was obviously in the courtroom, I think, this time, but I don't know. I've seen him in the media room, so I have no clue. Because I know Sylvia usually takes like a certain area in the courtroom because I've been in there, and like she stays like on the end of that area, and I guess they all are supposed to be on the same bench or something. So there's been some type of issues related to room, and you ain't give me room, and all the little catty stuff that's been going on. But when I've been in Georgia to cover Ernest Williams, I try to go down to YSL, but I just can't. I can't take it past the 15 minutes. Usually I go in there, and luckily I always go in there around the same time. We're about 15-20 minutes from a break. And then they say, well, we're going to take a 15-20 minute break and we'll be back. I'm like, great. And then I usually tell Deb, hey, Deb, where you at? I've had enough of this YSL stuff. I'm going to go. So I've never stayed there very long. So shout out to all of them that are able to sit up in that courtroom on a daily basis and stream it for the public. I think you're dope, because I don't even like sitting in court like that unless it's my own case. But that just may be because I do it so much that me just sitting there watching other people is just, I feel like I should be getting paid or something, because that's what I do when I go to court. So it's very difficult for me to just sit in there. Then it's all these, they object every 2 minutes and they're arguing, and then the prosecution is going to make some mistake. Then of course the defense is going to find it, what the mistake is. Then they got to say, Your Honor, I have a motion that has to happen outside the presence of the jury. Then the jury gets up and they leave, and then they're arguing on the record, because they do about 10 mistrials, a month. So then they got to argue all the mistrials. Then the judge tells the prosecution how sloppy they are, and even made a comment of, I'm trying to fix your sloppy work, or something that I think shouldn't have never been said. But nonetheless, and then she'll chastise them and I guess embarrass them a little bit. I mean, one of the prosecutors, I think she said, I'm not telling you what to do, because I think he said, well, if this is what Your Honor wants us not to enter in this picture, then we won't enter it in, as the prosecution. She said, it's not what I want. The only thing I want is attorneys that actually know how to try cases. I was like, geesh. I mean, she been throwing some gut blows. But at the end of the day, she has not granted any of the mistrials, even though she has, said a lot of slick things on the record. Peaceful said, I think Miss Sylvia caught Love reprimanding her team, and she using that as an excuse to get her out of the courtroom. I don't think it was intentional at all. Okay, Peaceful. So Sylvia caught them reprimanding their team, according to Peaceful. And she thinks that this is the overlay for the underplay, that really was not the reason. They were just trying to get them up out the courtroom. That is definitely a theory. Tay said, is it me or Hilton was trying it today and Paige and Harvey had to set the record straight? Yeah, it sounded like to me that Hilton was trying to throw all this information on the record and wanted him to just agree, yeah, that's the factual basis. But his attorney, Mr. Nichols' attorney, was very clear that he is not, his factual basis and his reason for pleading is not all of the information that Miss Hilton tried to put in her factual basis. So I think that's quite clear on the record. But Tim Bree said the judge is very slick at the mouth. Listen, I'm so used to it because sometimes with judges, and of course I don't practice in Georgia, but I just know my personal experience. Some of it just has to do with how they wake up in the morning. Okay, sometimes you walk in the courtroom, they come out robe half zip. They're like, "Good morning, counsels. How's everyone doing? Has anybody settled their case yet?" And then you start laughing and da 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 da. Then you get some that sit on the bench and they're just, you walk up there, they're like, "Why'd you wear green today?" You're like, "Dang, good morning to you too." Counsel. I mean, I tried to read that. It was so sloppy. I mean, where did you go to school at? Did they not teach you penmanship? So it just depends. And you get over it so fast that it just doesn't. If you do this all the time, if you've been doing this long enough, you have had some judges try to cut you up a little bit. And as long as it's not disrespectful to the point, like I had a white judge, older judge, try to say, call me girl one time, stuff like that, I will definitely correct you in a respectful way. But other like just throwing little jabs, I don't really care. I'm like, at the end of the day, sometimes I'll just look at them and say, "Okay, are you finished?" And then I'll just go back to whatever I'm arguing, because some of that, I'll say they have robitis. That's what I call it. You're an attorney that got elected or an attorney that got appointed. It's not like there's some special magical place that you go in order to get this position. Like you didn't go to a separate law school and take a separate bar. You were elected or you were appointed. And sometimes people get on the bench and they get the itis, they get robitis, of which they talk to you like trash and they forget that they were in the position that you were in. And they also forget that they can still be in the position that you're in, because there are a lot of judges that practice for a while and they don't practice anymore. Like, I mean, they practiced for a while, they became a judge, and now they're back practicing. So now you got to stand before some of the people that are now judges that you decided to chastise and disrespect. Some of it just isn't necessary. But after you've done this for a while, you get a decade or so in, you're like, whatever. Let me just fight for my client and zealously advocate, which is what I am paid to do. So yeah. You said me. I didn't sleep with you, ma'am or sir. Oh, you will have attorneys that are mumbling that in the gallery, like, "Oh, geez, like, well, she got into it with her husband or he got into it with his wife." You get a lot of those comments, but then you have some that are very pleasant. Like you have some that are, and it's usually the ones that have practiced for a long time and they know your time is important. They know you're hustling. They know, having you sit in court all day, watching everybody else and not doing their dockets timely is affects you and your firm. Like that, you do have some that are great, great judges. So I don't want to make it seem like all of them are like that, but you do have some that they get that bench, honey. They get that little robe and they're just like, "I am superior." Like how they get, but that's it. Love was a judge, which is correct. Yeah, that happens a lot. That's why I said, just because sometimes you're appointed as well. Like, say you get appointed for the position by the governor to fill somebody's position who moved up to another level, or they went from the trial court to the court of appeals or the Supreme Court of the state. And then they have to actually run after that. And sometimes they don't get reelected. So a lot of people, they practice, they become judges, and then they back practicing again. So, they need to keep that in mind while talking to people like garbage. You know what? Dre's run over Croc said, "Hey, Pammy, Intellect, Dennis and Sylvia sitting in a tree." You know what? Dennis would be very upset if he heard that. He would be very upset. Tay said, "I think this is going to be hard for the jurors to overlook. This stipulation is going to be crazy if this trial continues." This whole trial is just, it's a special event. That's all I can say. Simply Me said, I feel like you aren't gonna ever get a break. We still have Nesto, then Diddy and May. Yep. I'm you already know when I started, I'm gonna try my best to get through it, but that's why I'm very leery on taking on new, fresh cases because the ones that we are covering, such as Diddy, and I don't even cover everything with Diddy and with Nesto. He has so many allegations against him that yeah, we're gonna be well into 2025 doing them. So Dennis said, then Jay Vicker said Dennis should have kept his wings and black dress. I tell Dennis all the time, I'm like, this is your fault. This is what you created. And he'll laugh about it. But yeah. I'm like, you taught her how all you have to do is do a rule 22. Let me show you how to do this. Let me show you how to do that. You know. Now he's like, dang, I wish I ain't never. And Dre said, oh, it was intentional and she was bragging about the footage. Really? She was bragging about what footage did she get? So, what's my opinion on whether Whitehead has provided info on Adams? Remember, we talked about Whitehead for 2 years too. So, a lot of cases they last a long time. I think that he didn't have much information to give because I sat in the trial. And if he had the information to give, I think Whitehead would have given it. I think Adams knew what Whitehead was about, and he knew that Whitehead really didn't have much to offer him, and he was trying to come up in the political game. So Whitehead wasn't how he finagled his way into, my understanding though is that even he knew Adams even before some of those text messages that they started. I think they started in 2016. He may have known him before that, but the stuff they had on paper, that they can trace, there really wasn't nothing that was really in those texts like that. But they did use one of the text messages that were submitted in court in Whitehead's trial. They did use one of those text messages between Adams and Whitehead. It was one where when Whitehead was trying to run for Brooklyn Borough president, and he was trying to get Adams to endorse him. Remember, Adams endorsed somebody totally different. He actually endorsed the person that preceded the person after he became mayor and stepped down. The person who Adams endorsed is the one I think that got the position of Brooklyn Borough president. And so Whitehead wanted all the support from Adams, and Adams told him via text, the way that you win elections is you have to raise money. And so the government actually used that text, I believe, in that indictment. So there's some crossover between Whitehead and Adams. Now, how deep that crossover is, I don't really know. Any other questions? Any other questions? But anyway. Yeah, Jackson, Tabasco, you have to go to the beginning. We actually watched when they got called to the podium. You have to rewind this video here, and then you'll see it for yourself. Tay said, oh, she got a lot. She has the state's attorneys freaking out and running out the courtroom. The defense attorneys meeting, couldn't hear but saw it all. She had 3 camera angles after the mistrial request. So I'm assuming the judge wasn't on the bench when she caught all of this action. Stacy, that first twin, you're right. Adams did not mess with Whitehead like that. That's what it looked like at the trial. Now, hey, they may flip the whole script when it comes to Adams' trial. I don't know. Toria said, I wonder how Whitehead is doing in jail. I bet Whitehead would try to get time taken off by lying on Adams. Whitehead actually still has cases going on. And I know one of the cases that the only interview we've done on this platform, which was the campaign worker, Yves Andre, he still has a case against Whitehead. And I want to say it's coming up in a week or two. So he still has cases that he's fighting. Now, the one he did a defamation case against Larry Reed. He lost that one. Pauline Anderson, I was looking at her case, it's still on hold. They haven't done anything with the case with Glory of God, which is the church that he snatched up. So he still has a lot of cases pending. And in theory, he is allowed to come to court. Like he is allowed, not physically, but they would have him on Zoom. So it'll be interesting to see how these cases end, because you know he's not just giving up anything. He'll probably still try to fight for that church, and he's behind bars. But he has an attorney, I believe, for the Glory of God situation. He has an attorney. And for Yves Andre, I don't think he has an attorney. I think his attorney, which was Brian Ponder, has withdrawn out of that case. And we know that he lost against Whitehead lost against Tasha K too, or Tasha K's companies. I think he couldn't do it directly with Tasha K because, or sued Tasha K for defamation because Tasha K was in bankruptcy. So push the likes up for me before we get up off of here. Simply Me said, did Asia divorce him? We do not know. Does anybody know Asia? Can anybody give me any info? Because Asia, between Asia and Shirley Strawberry, they are the most unbothered, not talking about their situations I have ever seen. Asia continue to come on every day, 5 days out of the week. Come on in, everyone. Come on in, everyone. I see you over there in the Bahamas. Hey, Bahamas. Hey, Europe. I see you. I see you, champions. I see you, champions. God is going to do the seed today is deliverance. The seed today is deliverance. Every dollar that you give today is deliverance. And she's shaking the baby. She's shaking the baby. Come on in, champions. Come on in. Like she didn't care. She did it from the car, the tree, in the zoo, in the restaurant. She did not care. One thing Asia Dorsey's was going to do is continue her ministry. Okay. So we don't know what's going on with her because she doing the same stuff she was doing before. What we do know is she didn't show up not one day for that trial. What we do know is that they don't live together, even though he said that, well, of course they don't now, but even before he went to prison, they weren't living together because he had to say that when he was trying to go to pretrial services and they got released in one of the motions. But he said that he wasn't living with him and his wife weren't living together, but he blamed it on bloggers putting his house out there and his information, and that somebody tried to break into his home is what he alleged. But we know he's not an honest person. But that's what he said as to why they weren't, living together. And then, he was talking to another blogger at one point, and the question was asked about his wife, and he was like, me and my wife are good, but we know they weren't good. So we'll never know unless you're Asia's friend or somebody close to her. We won't know because she probably filed it in some rural place or something that nobody goes to. If she did file for divorce, to make sure nobody could find it. So if anybody can find that, anybody can find the Whitehead divorce, please DM me and let me know. There may be a reward. There may be a reward if you can find that divorce. Man, best way possible, said Asia heard a sound and hit it. Man, listen. She said, what you're not going to do with your scamming behind, you are not going to mess up my breakfast of champions, because I got faithful followers, okay? She slowly took that Whitehead off her name and she started using Bishop Asia. She was like, I'm just not going to use the last name because I don't want to tip the people off. But they don't know that that's the first tip when you start talking about your name is Julianne and all of that, and you've been Julianne Robinson Smith all these years. You know what I'm saying? So she slowly was. I was watching her. I was watching. Shirley just was like, Nesto who? She filed for divorce. She was like, no, I don't need to get it and all. It's cool. I'll just divorce him. I'll divorce him. That's it. She hasn't made one. After she apologized to Steve Harvey and secured her bag, she says she does not care what any blogger, vlogger, journalist, social media influencer. I don't care who says what, when, which way, or how. She said, I'm going to move on with my life. And she got that bag. She renewed that contract. And she moved on. So I mean, I think they should do a panel. We've had enough panels on how to learn how to trade stocks. We need one on how to be unbothered, like Asia and Shirley Strawberry. Then we got Jennifer Williams. While we talking about it before we get off here, Jennifer Williams from Basketball Wives. All this information came out about her man. She still married him over there. Well, we don't know if they like legit married, but she went through the ceremony. So she went through the ceremony, even changed, I think, her name to Gold on Instagram, which I think is cute because apparently his last name isn't even Gold yet. It's still Walden. He trying to do a name change. But nonetheless, he has a hearing coming up as well because apparently he has violated, or there's a show cause or something. It doesn't say the papers why. Let me strike that. I don't want nobody be talking about I said he violated. But there is a show cause coming up as to why whatever was done, why he shouldn't be held in contempt, I assume. So that's coming up like in the next couple of weeks as well. And then I guess according to Simone Redwine, Girl Is That Legal, who has been following this Jennifer Williams situation, he tried to grieve her and reported her, I guess, to their state bar, trying to get her disbarred because of how she was reporting. So yeah, it's a lot going on in these streets. Then of course we got Diddy. You have Diddy, who the judge did not enter a formal gag order, but did say, remind everybody what the rules are, that you shouldn't be leaking this information. And basically there'll be repercussions and consequences if they find out that you've been leaking it. So that's what's going on all the cases that we have been following. Yeah, he has the child. So with the child support, so I knew the reason why, okay, so I knew about who the baby mother was, and I knew the child support case. But I opted because I know that we have a lot of great researchers out here, including like Tracy. And I'm talking about Jennifer Williams. I'm back on Christian Gold now. And so I never reported that. I did see she had, what happened is when you are on some type of state aid, most of the time they will ask, who's the daddy? And when you give them the information about who the daddy is, then the Department of Human Services or their state agency, they will file a child support action on your behalf. Because I know in Georgia, they protect the child. So they don't care if you don't want to as the mom, because you don't want to shake it up, don't want to shake up the tables. They'll do it on your behalf. So apparently what happened was she filed, the DHS filed on behalf of her, or the babies rather, and there was some type of child support petition filed, but then they closed it out because they were saying that they couldn't find him, I'm sorry. And I was like, he on TV, like we know exactly where they're at. They're posting stuff on Instagram, so it was closed out. So allegedly, I guess a month ago, she filed a new petition of which she's claiming abandonment. So they have some hearings going on for that. So that's what's going on with the Jennifer situation. But yeah, I never really talked about the child support aspect because you guys know I put up documents and there was like no way I could put up the documents without you guys figuring out where you can find this information. And then the mom, she went anonymous when she did an interview. And so because she did that, obviously she's not trying to be thrust in the limelight. And so I respect that. Y'all know I did that with Sonya too. Like, I knew who Sonya was 3 months before she was revealed. I just was like, when she decides to come out, which I knew she would eventually. I was like, she's listening to the cause. I was like, she doesn't seem like a person that's just gonna sit back and not expose who she is. And then that's when, I was like, oh yeah, her picture can go on a thumbnail now. She done came out, started her own channel, doing interviews and all of that. But I knew who she was a long time before her face came out. Thank you so much for the super chat. Have you read up on the update on Tory Lanez? Yep, I forgot about him too. I did talk about Tory Lanez because that was the first case that I actually sat in a courtroom and watched, and I was in California. And so what happened is with the Tory Lanez case, there's been a lot of misinformation on Tory Lanez as well. So Unite the People, which is a organization that helps people, I guess, low bono. It's not necessarily pro bono, but it's low bono, I assume. And they're a nonprofit to help people get defense attorneys and, fight for people. And this was an organization that Tory donated to when he was out. He donated a lot of money, would help women get out, I guess, for holidays and people that couldn't afford bail, just all type of great things. Well, Unite the People, after Tory was convicted and sentenced to 9 years, they took over his case. And so they have filed an appeal, and they also filed what's called a habeas. So recently, what happened was their attorneys wanted to add an additional habeas claim. And so you have to get permission from the court. Basically, the court has to accept it, get permission and whatever. So when that petition was filed, and I believe the claim was that some information was missing. They said the GUNs was missing, the fragments in Meg Thee Stallion, they're missing, the fragments for the bullet fragments, they're missing. And they wanted to do testing, and they're alleging that because they can't do the retesting on their own, he's being prejudiced. So everybody went all over the place because the way it was framed in a lot of blogs was on Unite the People, they put the court has accepted his innocence claim. So people were like, we knew Tory was innocent. Tory about to come home. You seen all these umbrellas. And then the blogs ran with that, and they would switch it around. The appellate court has agreed that Tory was innocent. So then that went amok for a minute, which it really was not what happened. What happened is the court said, okay, we'll just accept your habeas petition with your other petition, and we'll consider it together. And then they gave the state time to reply. The court is not going to make a decision on innocence or not, and the state hasn't even replied to the petition. So it was a confusing document. And I think that the real issue is most attorneys don't put little procedural documents out there because that's not really anything worth telling the public. But I think when it comes to Tory, because he has so many fans, that the organization and the people that are representing him, they're trying to tell the fans step by step what's happening. But the problem is the fans aren't lawyers or in the legal profession, and they don't really understand what's happening. They want it to mean one thing, and it really was just a procedural document. So then Mr. Shapiro, that represents Meg Thee Stallion, he is also the one that represents Eric Adams, I believe, and I think he's represented Jay-Z or something in the past. He came out and said that was not true, that in fact the gun, the GUN, and the bullets and all of that stuff is still with the LAPD. So they said that's not true. So that was their response, that their whole habeas is not, people like, it's missing, they should just let them out. But that's not even how that goes. Even if it did happen to be missing, there are procedures and protocols to it. But nonetheless, so that was that. So they've responded and said that's not true with the habeas. And of course, the state is going to respond. And actually, they got kind of slick because they said, let me see. Hold on one second. They actually got kind of slick with this. Let me see something. See if I screenshot it. I may not have. No. Then there was another issue before we get off with Tory Lanez wrote a letter to the bar on Sean Holly, who is a notable, seasoned attorney who has represented many high-profile people. She was actually with Johnny Cochran, okay? She's no joke, and a lot of celebrities want her to represent them. And so he wrote a letter to the bar, and it's dated October 26th of 2024 with a formal ethics complaint, basically saying she had a relationship with Roc Nation. She did not disclose that relationship with Roc Nation, and he felt like she got his money and then she abandoned him. And so that was part of why he's in prison, just in a nutshell. Sean Holly has responded and basically said that he made these same complaints a year ago. She's never had business ties with Roc Nation, and Roc Nation has nothing to do with the television show Reasonable Doubt, because the show Reasonable Doubt, Sean Holly is the co-producer. And they're trying to say, you know, because of course Jay-Z's album was called Reasonable Doubt, and there was some songs with Rihanna and Jay-Z or something in the show, and she put on the credits she was legal counsel or something like that. So he's trying to say there was a conflict of interest and she never disclosed that. Basically Roc Nation, who is the management company at the time, or was the management company at the time for Meg Thee Stallion, that she was representing them, which makes a conflict for her to represent him. She said that is not true. She's never had business ties with Roc Nation. She's never Roc Nation has nothing to do with the television show Reasonable Doubt, which she co-produces. She said Mr. Peterson made these claims over a year ago to the state bar, which rejected them and promptly closed the matter. Now, his team, Tory's team, said that there was never a complaint made before now, because the letter that was posted by Unite the People is dated October 26th of 2024. And I guess he's alleging now is the first time. So that is what happened. It's happening. Tory is throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks. But I'm not mad at him. You know, 9 years is a long time. You try to do what you can, I guess, to get what you need done. But thank you so much for the super chat. I hope that answered your Tory question. Andrea says she tried to help the fool and steer him in the right direction, and he is the thanks she gets. Well, yeah, you know, you have to deal with that. People do try to play with your bar card. That's why there are some people that I just won't represent, especially if I've seen you grieve other attorneys. I'm like, because I can't guarantee you anything. I can only zealously defend and do my best. But what's interesting though is you say Sean Holly is the reason why, because she pulled out of your case, is the reason why you lost. But from my understanding, Magdesian, who is the one that actually did defend him, he was a part of the case the whole time. He had a whole team. But perhaps Sean Holly was lead attorney. It was her and some other lady were lead. And so they had to pull out. But she did, from my understanding, she still was representing Tory on some civil aspects with like August Alsina. Because remember, Tory had some other issues that were going on as well, where he was accused of like sucker punching August Alsina. So I think she was a part of that as well. But nonetheless, he said he paid her about $300,000 and she ain't did a damn thing, and he wants his money back. So that's that. But he said Magdesian, he did an ineffective assistance of counsel claim for Magdesian. And I think that I probably would have as well, if, as they are alleging, you had the driver of the vehicle who was the security guard who was willing to say that Tory didn't do it, or there was a struggle or whatever, or there was a fight between Meg and her best friend Kelsey, and then you choose not to have him testify. But I guess his attorney felt like the driver was not going to give information that was beneficial to Tory. So, I can see that being a murky issue on being ineffective if you was literally going to have something. Now, if he was going to say Tory didn't do it, then that definitely would have been ineffective, that you wouldn't have put him on the stand. That'd have been crazy. You had somebody that legit says you didn't do it, but I don't think that driver was going to just plainly say that when I read the affidavit. So that was part of the first habeas, I believe, or one, maybe their appellate brief. I don't know. It was a part of something, one of their post-conviction, one of their post-conviction petitions that they made, of which they did attach the bodyguard. And basically the state said that's not new information. You guys knew exactly who this person was. So that's not new evidence. You can't say it's new evidence when you knew about him. So that's Tory. Tracy said the little dirt doc was hard to follow. Yeah, it was an actual complaint. So I still haven't read that. I'm going to be perfectly honest, even though I've had it since the day we found out that there was a complaint filed. Andrea said Magdesian came out that day. The driver showed up and told Nancy DeLine. The driver told him he was going to testify that he nor Kelsey's. Oh, that neither one of them did it to Meg. He's grasping at straws. Oh, wow. I was there when the driver showed up because I was like Googling, trying to see what he looked like. I was in the hallways. I was like, is that the driver? That was after pretty much everything was done. And I was like, is that the driver? Like, people were just showing up. Quan showed up. All these people was just showing up. It was like, I think it was Meg's bodyguard showed up, and then it was Tory showed up. Because one of them had a bench warrant. Yeah, so Elite Leo says, so when they were looking for the bodyguard early on, he was MIA. No one's fault but Tory's. He had the man hiding out until the last day. I don't know what was up. I think there may have been. Now, what I will say, and I said it before, and I have a dog in the fight. I'm not an umbrella. I'm not and I ain't no stallion either. Like, I don't either way. I'm just looking at the evidence and the facts that were presented. Tory does not have the burden of proof. It is the government that had it. They had the burden of proof. On proving him, whether he was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So he doesn't have that burden. So he doesn't, in theory, have to put on a case. However, I do believe that it should have been a bit more effort than what was given. When they rested their case, I was like, huh? Because the attorney was making a lot of inferences and references, and they were saying things about Roc Nation, but nobody came on the stand from Roc Nation. Nobody even knew for certain, except for what the attorney was saying. Nobody ever knew if they really came to Tory with the deal. Nobody really knew if Tory turned down the deal. This was all speculation. None of this was really evidence that was entered in. And what we say as attorneys is not evidence. So saying that, trying to place things in someone's head, but if that's not anything that you consider when you're back deliberating, it doesn't matter what you saying, because a jury instruction is going to come out that says what the attorneys say are not evidence. So we can say whatever and give our theories, but until we have the actual evidence that is admitted, not overruled, not not sustained when they try to make it inadmissible. So we're trying to say admissible evidence. That's what the jury is going to consider, admissible evidence, not what we think it is, not inferences, not what whatever. Even if it's circumstantial evidence, that can be entered in as admissible evidence, but that's what they look at. And I just don't think Tory and them just submitted anything that you can take away from the testimony. It just was a credibility contest. So either you believe what Kelsey said initially to the police was true, or you believe that she didn't know anything and she just lied the whole time when she went on the stand like she was alleging. Either you believe the man that didn't have a dog in the hunt, because he didn't know none of these people. He was a man that the fight happens the alleged incident happened behind his home. He was just a random person. He testified and he said the little guy had a gun in his hand, and it was and you seen, you know, the little guy, that's what he was calling him. And then you seen basically the sparks from the gun and all of that. So he like placed the gun in Tory's hand. It was like, huh? Why was he called? Because I think it was Tory and them that called him. So Tory's dad was saying that his testimony changed after the state. So the state didn't really talk to him before, but of course, before he testified, they were able to talk to him. So I guess what Tory's father was trying to say is that that was not going to be his testimony before. I would assume that he didn't put the gun in his hand, because why would y'all call him? You know, that's not what he said before, but we don't know what questions were asked. It was an investigator that went out and talked to this guy. So we really don't know. So I'm just saying, based on the evidence that was there, I see why he was found guilty. I knew he was going to be found guilty. Everybody was in the hallway all shocked. I'm like, and they got mad at me when I was like, oh, he's going to get found guilty. Because I looked at the evidence that was admitted. That's not to say that Tory doesn't have any other evidence. That doesn't say that that Tory doesn't have any defense at all. That doesn't say any of that. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that it was not presented for the jury to consider. And it doesn't matter what you know, it's what you can prove. So you can say anything. You can say Jay-Z himself was like, you know, like was that Rihanna? I think it was Rihanna was saying that he told him about signing the deal and some of the alleged threats that they say that Jay-Z did. You got to come with some evidence that that's what he did to you, and you feel like all of this is a setup from Rock Nation, because that's really what their argument is. Because you guys recall Tory's dad, you know, going off in the courtroom when his son got found guilty. Or no, it wasn't when he got found. It might have been the sentencing. Was it the sentencing? I don't know. It might have been when he was found guilty. I can't remember. I was there for both. But when he made, you know, went all off and everything, and he blamed Rock Nation, but there was really no evidence of that. So did they ever play the 911 call the witness made? Yeah, I think there was a 911 call that was played. I don't remember. I would have to look at my notes. Baelish said the conspiracy theories just don't make sense. The lady set him up. I just don't believe it. He's guilty and pulling at straws. Yeah, I'm just saying, based on the evidence that I saw, I see why he was found guilty, you know. And then even looking at their pleadings, you know, they got a uphill battle. I think they do have a fight. Because again, new evidence is different. Now, I think they're trying to say ineffective assistance of counsel, perhaps, but now you're saying it wasn't really Magdesian's fault because he didn't have much time, because you're saying that Sean Holly was the one that left you stranded. So we'll see. You know, we'll keep our eye out. Tory was one of the first cases, was the first case I went into the courtroom with in California. So we'll keep an eye on Tory. The little I saw, he was going hard for him. That's from Keep It Simple. You know, he was all right. He had some good moments. His attorney had some good cross. He did. But I just think that he didn't have enough. I just don't think that they presented enough. That's all. Grace, Mercy, and Say said, I have no idea who Tory is. Just like to hear Pam talk law and order. Well, I didn't know who Tory was either. So I'm going to be perfectly honest, until I covered the case. When I did Y&W Melly, I had no clue who the heck he was till I covered the trial. And it was very interesting because it did attract a lot of young people. And it was good because it was like a lot of young people came on in the chat and they were explaining to us who Y&W Melly was, and you know, and then they were like fighting each other on guilty and not guilty. And by the time it was over, we were like one big happy family on, okay, I can see your position. Okay, I can see your position. And that's all my point was. You know, I want people to be engaged. most people are my age, you know, the demographics over here, but it's kind of cool to see people that get engaged and are interested in the judicial process. You know, it went from being just fans wanting to support them to them by the middle, like, oh man, that's messed up. If that gets entered, that's gonna jack him up, like to change their mindset. So that's why I cover some of these young individuals that are rappers and singers and all of that, because I've never heard of them either, and probably wouldn't know who they were if it weren't for my kids. Miss HLS said everybody's fault but Tory. Pretty much. I mean, some people are just gonna ride with who, you know. Fancy, I hope you're still here. Thank you for becoming a member over here. I appreciate that. I missed your membership badge, but I'm gonna get off of here because it's 3 o'clock and I was only supposed to be on here for them few minutes. But you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully I'll have time to come back on soon. But make sure you hit that like button on the way out and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. I hope I answered all of your questions. If not, DM me. I'm always open. I'll talk to you later.